Let's talk about establishing a platform. Every story takes place in some kind of story world. It could be a vast world of intergalactic empires or a tiny world of one family's home. Each is its own story world. What most good stories do is begin by establishing the normal state of this world before they disrupt it and set the main story in motion. We could call this process setting the scene, but Keith Johnson and Impro for Storytellers uses the frame establishing the platform, which is helpful because a platform implies stability and we destabilize a platform by tilting it. So this lesson is about getting familiar with the idea of establishing a platform and then touching on the related idea of a tilt. Establishing the platform is really combining everything we've done before, introducing, developing, and to some extent combining story elements. It's worth practicing because it's key to pacing and establishing a story world that's initially believable so that when things really start to happen in the story, the audience believes it matters. So let's look at how this works in text. As usual, fairy tales are very efficient at this. For example, how long does the fisherman and his wife spend establishing a platform before beginning to disrupt it? This snippet introduces the fisherman, his wife, then it combines it with the shack and develops the quality of the shack and the fisherman's routine, both of which are about to change, starting with the introduction of the flounder. So most of this at the beginning is what we call establishing platform. In Frankenstories, players might establish a platform within the first round. This story, Slip Horsey, quickly sets up a narrator who's got rage control issues, and it sets up his mountaintop home, develops that, and then it introduces a unicorn at the end, which is the beginning of the tilt. Other Frankenstories establish a platform over multiple rounds, sometimes only tilting the platform near the end, as in one more story. This one's long because it's a full game, but basically the story establishes a platform over 3 rounds. We have Mr. Flip talking to the fireplace. We develop details about the fireplace and the house in round 2. In round 3, we develop the substance of their conversations, and the platform is complete and ready for tilting in round 4. And some stories start in the middle of the action. Usually, if this is in a movie or a novel, the story will settle down and establish a platform once they've hooked the reader's attention. But some shorter stories might be set entirely within the chaos of a tilted platform. For instance, this Frankenstory is the aftermath of a child's parents being disappeared in a dystopian state. There's no stable platform unless you want to define instability as the norm in this world, which in dystopia is actually probably accurate. So how do we practice this as a skill? If your students have some basic skill in introducing, developing, and combining story elements, you can bundle all these together and focus on games that are just about establishing a platform and possibly tilting right at the end. So to set it up for students, introduce the idea that lots of stories begin by establishing a world, big or small, exotic or mundane. You can introduce terms like platform and tilt as needed in that conversation, and then tell students they're going to play a game which they're just going to establish a platform which they can tilt only at the very end, like in the very last line. You can frame it like they are setting the scene at the beginning of a story before anything dramatic happens. For something like this, you can use a standard 3 to 5 round game. Any prompt will do, and you can leave it fairly open-ended. Players just need to introduce, develop, and combine elements to establish a platform. The biggest challenge will be in not tilting or disrupting that platform too early. And there'll probably be some discussion about what constitutes a tilt versus just something happening. And it's okay to have some discussion and some confusion about that. What you want to encourage is in the very last line that players do something quite dramatic and see what they come up with. We have some example games to help model that. This one, Portrait of a Life, Mary Chicken Skewerer, does exactly what it says on the tin, sets up a portrait of a woman whose job it is to skewer chickens, and then has a tilt at the very end when all the chickens die. And this one, I need to tell you all about Gonzo, is about a narrator who teaches a water dragon how to get money out of the ATM and then regrets it for 4 rounds. And at the very end of the 5th round, Gonzo doesn't come home. And that would be the start of a real story. So some tips for this, the game will be easier if the platform is relatively sedate at the start. Dramatic situations can function as platforms, but they need to be established as a kind of stable, normal world, which can be a bit confusing for players when they get started. You can be directive at players within each round if you want, but ideally this game format is less about being prescriptive and more of an opportunity to think about the bigger picture of setting up a world and what that means and what it looks like. You need to be ready for that discussion about what exactly constitutes a tilt. And one answer is just that you'll know it when you see it. basically an event that throws the established world into chaos. So it's not incremental, it's really disruptive. And we have a few debriefing questions. How do players feel about the world they've created? Is it interesting? How detailed is it? Is it hard to resist tilting and making dramatic changes early? They manage to come up with a tilt at the end. Do they all agree on what it is that defines a tilt? And would they like to know what happens next? That's a good measure of whether or not they succeeded in setting up a good story. We've got a couple of handouts for you. This one's a summary for students, and we've got a guide to the platform game format you can use in class. If you get all that right, then you'll have students who are much better able to pace themselves in a story, take the time to assemble a coherent world, and with that foundation, do much better cause and effect and change, which is what stories are ultimately about. So try it out and let us know how you go.